Now, I don't know how many of you subscribe to the Freemasonic journal, the Philalethes, the Journal of Masonic Research and Letters. I've had access to a few of these past issues, and I've made some photocopies of several of the articles. There's two specific articles that are really interesting with sacred geometrical ideas that I want to share with you. One is by Jack Buta. It's called Esoteric Geometry 101. It's in the Philalethes for December 2005, pages 134 and 135. A certain point within a circle. Now this, of course, is the ancient Egyptian symbolism for deity, and it is a very important symbol for we Freemasons, the circle surrounding a point in the center of the circle. It's also a very powerful, interesting, sacred geometrical construct within the Kabbalah that I'll do some other videos on the Kabbalah. Boy, will I do videos on the Kabbalah. Anyway, we are told in our ritual that, of course, the point represents the individual brother. But this wasn't always true, and he goes to an ancient Egyptian construct here that is extremely interesting. This is fun. This is where we have acquired and put onto a symbol a particular meaning for our Freemasonic purposes. This is how symbols acquire various different meanings throughout the course of their lifetimes, whether it be for decades, centuries, or millennia. We Freemasons have acquired symbols from antiquity, of course, just like every single church has. Brother Buddha says that in civilizations such as Egypt, the circle, which is a symbol of perfection, represents heaven, and the dot in the center of the circle represents God. Now, this is a good Kabbalistic touch also. We also find it in the ancient Egyptians. This doesn't have to necessarily be the meaning of the symbol in Freemasonry for it to be useful, good, constructive for our applications. Symbols very rarely retain their original significance. In fact, the Egyptians were huge on cramming in as many meanings as they could to every symbol. He says, hidden within the circle are other perfect designs that can be unlocked by aid of the two primary working tools of a mason, the compasses and the squares. And so here's what he does. He's tinkering with sacred geometry, which is a wonderful meditation, and then he's coming up with something significant, new, and interesting. It increases our intellects. I love that aspect of Freemasonry. I really do. Well, with the compasses set to the diameter of the circle and the point on the circumference, a second circle can be drawn which twice intersects the circumference of the original circle. By connecting the centers of both circles to each other and to the points of intersection of both circles, two equilateral triangles are formed. Now, the equilateral triangle has three sides of equal length and three interior angles of exactly 60 degrees. This makes sense because the entire area of a triangle has to be 180 degrees in geometry. We knew that. So each angle is 60 degrees. A significant degree in Freemasonry, yes. It is also considered a symbol of perfection or heaven. Now, it's very interesting that by connecting the apex of both triangles, the base is bisected. And this results in two right angles within each equilateral triangle. The center of the triangle can now be found by resetting the compasses to the length of the base of right angle and drawing an arc. This arc bisects the sides of the triangle. A line from the intersection to the opposite corner of the triangle joins at the middle of the triangle. And this symbol was also used to represent deity. And it has been used as such by other civilizations and by we Masons. So returning to the original circle for a moment, and the compass is set to the diameter by staring at one of the intersections between the circles and continuing around the circumference of the circle, it can be divided into 6 equal arcs. and by connecting each are a perfect six-sided hexagon can be formed, which is also considered a symbol of perfection. And finally, within the hexagon lies the square. So here we get an enormous amount of geometric configurations very speedily, don't we? Every one of them are significant. From these geometric symbols of deity originally proceeded the more improved art of architecture. But there is one final secret within the circle which helped the Egyptians become the great builders of the ancient world, and it is found in the Great Pyramid. That secret is known by various names, but you probably know it as the number pi. Well, by definition, pi is the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. We all knew that. Pi is always the same number, no matter what circle you use to compute it. The Egyptians built the pyramid on a perfectly level bed of solid rock, and the foundations is a square oriented with the four principal directions of north, south, east, and west. The four corners of any square are all points on a circle, which allows for the use of pi. The Egyptians built the pyramid so that at the midpoint of the sloping sides of the structure, a second square or circle is used, which is exactly 1/2 of the base. This results in the slope of the sides being exactly 51.5 degrees. To the Egyptians, this structure was a solid version of the triangle and a symbol of deity. The center point over time was changed to a small circle and is also depicted as the pupil of the eye of the Egyptian god Osiris, which in turn evolved into the all-seeing eye. These builders would have been well schooled in astronomy in order to lay out the pyramid so precisely. At that time, the north finding stars were Kokov in the bowl of the Little Dipper, Ursa Minor, and Mitzar in the middle of the handle of the plow or the Big Dipper, Ursa Major. The Egyptian astronomers would have held up a plumb line and waited for the night sky to slowly pivot around the unmarked pole as the Earth itself rotated. When the plumb line exactly intersected both stars, one of about 10 degrees above the invisible pole and the other star was 10 degrees below it, the sight line to the horizon would aim directly north. The mastery of geography by these builders is also displayed in the Great Pyramid, because when we measure the base of the pyramid, we find it to be exactly equal to 1/2 a minute when measured at the equator. Fascinating how exact they were. In fact, when we look at this ancient civilization, we find evidence that these builders were skilled in all 7 of the liberal arts and sciences. So this is one aspect of how sacred geometry could have very well produced the pyramid, which involves the circle, the number pi, the square, and the square of the base of the pyramid, and the central point, the peak in the pyramid, as well as the triangle, all symbolizing aspects of deity, all using sacred geometry, and absolutely every one of these symbols are in use in our own fraternity, Freemasonry. Putting them all together, simply using compasses and squares, we find the circle with the center, we find the square, we find the triangle. Now the circle, the point in the center, represents each of us individually. But that central point can also represent deity, the cosmos, the central aspect of our ritual, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's fascinating how using just simple geometric shapes and symbolism, they come up with a concrete interpretation and build a pyramid to enclose these sacred geometric principles that we can use personally in our lives to align ourselves with the cosmos. I mean, that's beautiful stuff right there. Very interesting article, isn't it?